Eric. So we're absolutely thrilled to be joined tonight by three wonderful guests. We have with us Lisa Kröger, author, academic, podcaster, and one of the minds behind the brilliant Nyx Horror Collective, and one of the organizers of the 13 Minutes of Horror Film Festival, which played on Shudder this past month. And we're also joined by two of the filmmakers from that festival. We have Eunice Levis, director of Filmmakers, and Megan Llewellyn, director of Tailypo. So we're going to screen the full festival, which lasts all of 13 minutes. But before we do, Lisa, would you mind sort of introducing it, saying a few words about Nyx and how you started the 1 Minute Film Festival?
Sure. So I'm a part of the Nyx Horror Collective. We're a group of female horror creators who really just wanted, I think, to come together just in order to support each other, but also to create opportunities for women who are wanting to create in the genre. So it's been really a wonderful thing to see everybody really coming together. So the producers of the festival were myself, the Nyx co-founders, Melody Cooper and Kelly Krause, and then Mo Mashadi also worked with us. And this film festival was something that we put together really quickly. We actually conceived of it in January of this year. And we thought, why don't we see what we can do? Which really just, I think, goes to show you, if you have an idea, just to go out and do it, because none of us really had done anything quite like this. And we thought, why not put the call out, see what we can get? So we thought we would do 60 seconds horror films. The idea was that we wanted something bite-sized. We wanted something that people could watch really quickly. People consume content now on their phones. Just, you're sitting there waiting for life to start, but you're sitting there on your phone and you're watching just little snippets of something. And we wanted something that people could consume quickly, but also that these women filmmakers, the idea was something that they can show people and say, this is what I can do. And then grow opportunities from there, which was really the idea behind that. And the talent that we got just absolutely blew my mind.
I mean, you before we started, I was just gushing about how inventive all of the short films are, and what a range they cover. It's just absolutely spectacular. Eunice, had you already made this film, or was this something that you heard about and then made a 1 minute film for?
Yes, so it's something that I heard about. The inaugural theme was folklore, and I've always wanted to tell the story of the Ciguapa, which in the Caribbean is like a boogeyman, the equivalent to the boogeyman in terms of how popular the folklore is. And I wrote it, and I shot it before it was due, all within weeks, maybe like less than 4 weeks.
And Megan, this was the first film you ever made, right? So what about this contest made you say, I'm going to start making a movie right now?
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it when I saw it being shared. This was my first animation, my first movie. And I had done comics before, which are quite similar, also very much related to my love of movies. And it was sort of a, well, why not kind of a moment of, I got an immediate idea of like, oh, I really love this horror, this folklore and sort of ghost story I had grown up with Tailypo. And I was like just going, I think I could do this. If I don't, then, oh well, I learned something in the process. If I don't finish, I don't finish. But the 1 minute was so approachable that it was sort of a, why not kind of feeling. Like, yeah.
That's really great. Lisa, before we show the films themselves, how did you settle on folklore? Was it the first idea you guys came up with, or was there a reason why you wanted to go with this for the festival?
No, we had a list of potential themes that we had run through, and I think we settled on folklore because we knew that we would get that broad range, which is what we were aiming for. So we were trying to be very strategic in how we put this together. One of the things was making it 60 seconds because we knew just watching the films, we wouldn't have a lot of time, but we also wanted to make it approachable for filmmakers to, to have the feeling of if somebody had never done it before, they could even just pick up their phone and film something and make their first film. And folklore kind of played into that because just like the globe has a rich folklore history. So we knew that people would be able to pick from their own culture, their own personal history, their life experience, and be able to tell a story around that. So that was one of the reasons we really leaned heavily into folklore for this first go round, because we knew that people would probably respond well to it, and they did.
So Eunice, your film is the first in the group. You've talked about it a little bit. Is there anything you'd like to tell the audience before we screen it?
Oh my goodness. So I'm excited for you guys to see it. I think that the important thing is to remember that we did this under a thunderstorm. It was raining really, really hard. It was the middle of the night. And we were all doing takes under, we were like holding the camera under plastic. It was intense, but we got it done. It had to be a night shoot. So, and we had to wait for the sun to go down. One of those things, but yeah, please enjoy.
That's spectacular. And Megan, anything to prepare the audience for your film?
Oh gosh. I don't know. Also, that is amazing. I had no idea that you filmed in a thunderstorm. That sounds absolutely wild. Yeah, I hope, I'm really excited for everyone to see it.
Great. Lisa, why don't we start with you? So you've now, you've seen a bunch of entries and curated one festival, and you've put out calls for the next one, which will also be on Shudder. And the theme will be science fiction horror, right?
Yeah, sci-fi horror.
Sci-fi horror. Okay. So what makes a good 1 minute horror movie?
Ooh. Well, I think you have to be very careful in your storytelling with 1 minute horror, because you need to be able not only to kind of encapsulate the world that you're telling it in, but I mean, essentially these, and this just should go to tell you the immense talent that I think we found with this, but you have to be able to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, really, to have a good story. And they put that all in 60 seconds. But above all that, it has to be fun. Like, it has to be something that you enjoy watching. Otherwise, I mean, that's what horror is. No matter whether you're talking about folklore or sci-fi, it's got to be something that, kind of, even watching that, I've seen those so many times, but I started getting goosebumps during some of those, and I was like, oh, this is so fun. So yeah, I think that's what you've got to keep in mind. It's got to have the story structure, but it's got to be something entertaining.
Right. Eunice, what was it about this story that you thought fit into this particular container, the 60-second movie where you could get in and get out, telling a full story? Because there is an arc to it. There's a character, and there's a hell of an ending, a twist at the end.
Yeah. So as I stated earlier, I knew that I wanted to do this particular folklore. And I think that coming up with the story and this is like in general, just in bite size, but obviously you can amplify it. There's always going to be a character, the decision that that person has to make, and then there's going to be an outcome. So I wanted the character to be a young Black girl. I just wanted that. I never get to play around with that character. So I wanted her to be a young girl. So in this case, she's a teen, she's running late, and she makes a decision, which is to cut through the woods. And then the outcome is that she wakes up this demon. So, and you can apply it to anything. Like, I'll give you a story. Let's say the student is studying, right? That's your character. Your student is studying in the dorm. The light is flickering. She's like, she has to study. It keeps coming off and on, off and on. She makes a decision. First, she calls maintenance. Maintenance says, hey, we can't get there till the morning. It's getting worse. Off and on, off and on. So she decides to climb up and change the bulb. That's her decision. When she changes the bulb, she gets stuck, electrocuted, and she's fried. That's the outcome. And then if you want to be like really sick like me, then as she's frying, you hear maintenance knocking or something like that. But the idea is that you'll have a character, they have to make a decision, and then the outcome is a direct result of the decision. And that's how you make your 60 seconds. And each little act will be like 15 to 20 seconds. And that's how I cut up mine.
Well, you just finished shooting another short film. Do you feel that's longer than 1 minute? Do you feel like you exercise different parts of your brain in making a somewhat longer short film versus the, like uber compact 60-second Fell Ends?
Yeah. So with Fell Ends, it obviously a micro short, and it was the we experienced like I said, the character, her decision, and everything was fast. With my upcoming short, it's called Rowan the Stardust. It's 16 minutes long, and the character's arc. So in each little mini act, there's a flow and there's a change. So unlike Fell Ends, where we just get to see this character and experience her in that one decision making, we don't get to kind of follow her in the journey. And with my longer piece, you do. You get to follow a family of 3.
It seems almost like you're approaching the storytelling in the same way. It's just in the 16-minute version, you get to expand on all of the things that you're trying to fit into the 1 minute.
Yes.
Megan, so there's obviously a lot going on in your film, but it's so striking visually that it's almost distracting. And it's hard, like that's the first thing that you see the film and you just want to talk about what it looks like. If Eunice started off, it sounds like, with the story, but also wanting to tell a story about a young Black girl as a character. Where did you start off with in conceiving Tailypo? Was it a look? Was it a design?
So the look actually largely came from a very practical decision, because, and it was sort of more of like a form follow function in a way, because I knew that I did not have the I didn't have the technology or really even the knowledge or new people that I could shoot this live action and have it still all look cohesive, or even like how to like get all the pieces together of like, where do I find 3 dogs that I can train to run at me on cue? The hunter is actually my father, that I got but he lives out in Idaho, and I was like, I don't know anyone else that's closer to me on the East Coast in North Carolina, that I could work with to be like, hey, would you like to be in my short? And so what I decided to, that animation and in this style, I knew that I could draw it very quickly. I could use rotoscoping when necessary to, again, speed things up. And it was a way to take all these different pieces of like footage and inspiration and references that I was gathering and have it still feel cohesive. and that was kind of where the visuals were born from. Yeah, and trying to also create that sort of, I did want to have that sort of like storybook on creepy in the dark, like with a flashlight feeling for all of it.
Well, so I'm assuming that most people listening, because this is your first film, aren't aware of your work beyond Tailypo, but you are, of course, an illustrator as well, but a very specific kind of illustrator. Would you like to tell, would you mind telling us a little bit about your day job?
Yes, so I'm a medical illustrator, and I work with surgeons and researchers to illustrate make illustrations for their research, illustrate surgical processes, also their research, things for figures for grant proposals, different pieces of anatomy for instruction, for ranging from like patients to med students to other healthcare professionals. Yeah, that's what I do in my day job.
That's just the perfect origin story for a horror filmmaker. The medical illustrator, you can, in your next film can provide the most anatomically detailed gore scenes in history. But I think that experience as an illustrator, you had talked about it being the visuals being kind of reminiscent of a storybook. Precision of detail with the kind of dreamy or children's book style illustrations is just perfect for the tone. I'm shocked. I somehow didn't realize that it was not planned to be an animation from the start, that you had thought about shooting it live action. You said that you're that you're kind of working towards a second film. Would you want to continue in animation or shoot live action for your next one?
I am really interested in learning more about shooting live action. I also I would love to continue with animation. This then, like, live action also comes from like another form of practicality of if I can learning to do that, because one thing that I did learn through this process was animation is so physically taxing. I mean, I knew that going into it, but it is something that is like, oh, I'm going to need to be a bit more planned and have more time if I want to make more things using this medium. Right. So I also would love, and animation and live action inform each other as well. And so I would really, it's kind of also like would love to just like learn as much as I can and like play with as much as I can, because I'm a magpie for media.
Eunice, as someone with quite a bit of experience shooting live action films, do you have any advice for Megan as she develops her first live action film, or is anybody who's watching live or watching the recording, any of them are prepping to shoot their live action movies?
Well, in terms of micro short or just in general?
Just in general, something you wish you could tell young baby Eunice picking up a camera for the first time.
I think there's a few things. I think location is a big deal. Consider your crew and try to make it as tight as possible. Make sure all your departments are covered. Safety, now that we are living in COVID time. So one of the things that you obviously worked around was the fact that you controlled, it was in a controlled environment, everybody could stay in their own space. So that's a win for animation. And I think, what else? Rehearsal and blocking. I think that a lot of people, oftentimes when you start, you just think, oh, I have a location, and you just go there. But it's really important to block your scenes and get your talent used to the environment, so that everyone kind of knows what's happening and what it feels like, and they can envision it. And it just gives you a much faster workflow. once you're ready.
It seems like in that sense, a 1 minute film is a really fantastic exercise for learning sort of the basics of film efficiency, filmmaking efficiency, I guess. Because you have to pack so much in, like if you want to sort of maximize those 60 seconds, you do have to be precise in where the camera is. In each image has to mean something. Did you storyboard your film, or did you figure it out on the spot?
I did storyboarding. So I went to scout the location, spent 2 days kind of walking around and clearing. First of all, we cleared the path because we were in through the woods. So we had to like take garden snakes out and clear the path, make sure everyone's good. But also the lady that was playing La Ciguapa, she had to walk barefoot. So we had to clean it and pad it for her. So anyway, so we went through that. We did a lot of blocking, and if it was a different type of story I wanted to tell, I would definitely choose a one location, but I had to start in a street, cross the street, and then go into the woods. So it was a lot of coordinating. And we did a company move. Unfortunately, we had to do it, but yeah, I did storyboard it. I did walk through it with everyone. I took my talent there. They ate at the scene. They saw it during the daylight because it's very different at night. So we did all those things.
And how did you settle on the look for the monster, the backwards foot demon, Ciguapa?
Yeah. So I wanted her to look like she was part of the woods. Because in the legend, she is she's kind of the guardian of the woods, right? So I wanted her to look like she's part of the tree. So you see her skin looks like tree bark, and she has like leaves coming out of her, and I couldn't do too much of like the reveal of her because I just didn't have the time. And we actually had someone make her feet backwards, so her feet are actually backwards. But it was so dark and it was so fast that we couldn't really show it, but her feet are actually rotated. So when she walks, we cut her feet at the knee and spun it around, and that took forever. That probably was like the hardest thing to do in the film. And I think I know that we did it, and it feels great that we did get to do it. But I really wish that it's really visual, like, you know, people can see like, oh, her feet are really backwards. We tried.
Lisa, as you're preparing to receive, you know, the next round of submissions for the Sci-Fi Horror 1 Minute Festival, are there any pitfalls that you've noticed that you and your fellow Nix Horror Collective Brain Trust would like to warn filmmakers against?
You know, I will say I don't know if this is so much of a warning as I just
caution.
Yeah, let your imagination run wild with this, because I think the best stories and the horror that I enjoy is the horror that just pushes it a little too far and goes a little crazy. You know, just you can tell that it's a little bit uninhibited with that. I will also say, just going with that, and this is probably good for any storyteller, no matter what medium you're working in, but probably don't go with your first idea. Because whatever your first idea is, I guarantee you a few other people have it too. And we got a lot of entries that were the same type of story. And so try to find what is unique to you. Like, what is that story that, you know, maybe you grew up hearing and not other people might know. What is unique to the area you grew up in? What's unique to your background? Like, I don't know, just try to think of something beyond just that very first thing that pops into your head, because if it came to you too quickly, it probably came to other people really quickly too. Right. And that kind of helps you avoid those cliches. I would just caution against that. Like, know what are the cliches in the genre, and see what you can do to turn those on their head.
Well, I mean, one thing that, Eunice and Megan, one of the things that both of your stories do so beautifully is that they feel like familiar folklore, but they're not specific stories that I've ever heard before. As somebody who grew up in the Pacific Northwest, like, these do feel very specific to your own regions, your own backgrounds, the kind of stories that you heard. And that's really lovely that when you hear folklore, that doesn't, as Lisa says, that doesn't mean the, 5 stories that we all share. That's really wonderful. Megan, do you have any interest in monsters? You said that you've drawn comics and that there's some relationship between your comics and Tailypo. But are you, other than, your day job as a medical illustrator, are you much of a horror or genre person? Or was this kind of branching out into something new for you?
Oh, I devour horror. I love it so much.
That's the right verb too. Devour it.
I'm actually for the October draw challenge thing, I am currently actually drawing movie monsters. I love monsters. I really love horror and watching. I also just love movies and the storytelling of it, because also one thing that was fun with working as a medical illustrator and comparing that to film and horror also is illustration is also a form of storytelling, just in a static image. But and it is about what is your you have to identify your audience, you have to identify your focal point of what is the key information, the key concept, key emotion you want your audience to have. What looking at your illustration, and then similarly with a film, where it's what is the most important thing about that, and where do you want your audience to be looking. So that's always been a fun kind of intersection. I love monsters. I have, unfortunately, as I been working more and more as a medical illustrator, I do get a bit more critical about the gore in horror movies.
Critical as in you find it unconvincing?
Yeah, I specifically intestines. I'm sorry. They are not links of sausage with nothing in between them. That you can't jump rope with them. There's a lot of stuff in between holding them in your body. It's called a mesentery. It has the blood supply. Sorry, this is my one pet gore pet peeve.
It comes up a lot.
It does. I can for comedy horror, fine, it's great, because that's the point. But yeah, no, that's the quickest thing to get me out of suspension of disbelief.
Do you have a favorite monster to draw?
The xenomorph. It's so good. It's so good.
I feel that's a spectacular answer. I feel like if I had any artistic talent whatsoever, I would love drawing the xenomorph. Yeah. Eunice, do you have a favorite monster, or one that you'd love to make a movie about? Frankenstein.
I love Frankenstein, and I would totally make it. Obviously, for me, it'll be a woman, but also it'll be completely different, in a completely different era. I just already have it in my mind, and I'm definitely doing it.
Well, that's spectacular. I love all the conviction. That's very exciting. It feels like lately a lot of particularly women authors and filmmakers have been getting a lot of inspiration from the old original monsters and retelling the stories of Dracula. There's multiple stories retelling Dracula that are coming out in novel form in the next year or so. And it's just, it's very exciting to have new new perspectives on stories that really have become so familiar they're like folklore for us. They sort of, Frankenstein should be told again and again. And Lisa, as somebody who is wearing a Frankenstein t-shirt, do you have a favorite monster?
I didn't even notice.
Yeah. Well, clearly I can't say Frankenstein now. No, I think, anything of the shapeshifter variety, I'm a big fan of. So, I mean, it doesn't always have to be werewolves, but I love people morphing into, the creatures. I love, there's such good body horror in that you can do. I feel like it's screaming to have like a female gaze to that too, because female bodies go through such transformations over the years that there's just something wonderful there. But then also going from a normal human to something that has power, destructive power especially, is just wonderful. So I'll just say shapeshifters in general are really cool.
That's so beautifully put. That's spectacular. We do have time for a few questions from the audience. If anybody is interested, please just enter them in the chat. We can, let's see. Okay. So Eunice, can you tell us anything about the short film that you just finished that will be screening shortly, you said?
Yes. So the short film that I just finished is called Row in the Stardust, and it is an urban fantasy. And I did it through an incubator sponsored by NALIP. It's an organization, National Association of Latino Independent Producers, and Netflix. And tomorrow, the October 13th and the 14th, it's the Latino Media Fest, and it's going to be a special showcase there, special screening, and then we'll start the festival process.
That's fantastic. And I know you just finished this, but it sounds like you're incubating a Frankenstein project, maybe something on a grander scale for some time in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, please keep us updated on that. It sounds exciting.
I will. Definitely.
So Megan, you said you're studying filmmaking, you're reading books on screenwriting and all that. Do you have anything that you're working on or that you'd like to share with us, that you're able to share with us?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I have like a few, I do have a few short stories that I had actually drafted first with the intention of being comics, but I'm sort of reworking them a little bit, that I was like, there are things that I think I could feasibly do myself as well. And so as sort of trading wheels, learning more of how to do things, and trying to take all the little bits of information of okay, one location and limited cast and things like that, and single points of of how to just the sort of the advice of just make something, and try to really take that and run with things. And so there's one that I'm really excited about, that I have it sort of drafted out and I've been storyboarding it, is sort of also, I love that it's going back to old stories, going back to Frankenstein and Dracula, because I think also as we're so much more familiar with them, we become more and more familiar with the derivatives and there's detail, the fact that Frankenstein is a story within a story within a story. It's being told by this ship captain who then talked to Victor Frankenstein, who is telling, everyone's relaying stories to each other, and it's things that never or other details about how the creature his travels and things. There's so many things that get lost with the like time. So yeah, I was thinking about that because like this one is sort of like the version of Sleepy Hollow with the headless horseman, but from trying to have it as from perspective of the horseman, and see what I can do with that. So that's because it is like a familiar story that I think also works with shorts of like having a kind of big baseline like of like introduction of people like, oh, okay, we're in the woods, this is the kind of story to like go with. I don't have to come with like a huge world building and like make extra work for myself that way. So that was something that's been a short story that I've been trying to figure out what to do.
That's fantastic. Lisa, you are one of the premier historians of women's horror, the author of Monstrous, she wrote, award-winning book about women horror writers, the co-host of the ongoing podcast of the same name that spotlights a different work written by a woman or directed by a woman or about a woman every episode, with some delightful little detours from time to time to things like Elvira and that sort of thing. A very fun episode, a good place to start, I would say. One of the viewers has a question: are there any tropes or themes in horror that you would like to retell differently? As somebody who's been steeped in the history of horror, are there any particularly annoying tropes in the horror genre that you want to see tackle to offer their own alternate interpretation of?
I mean, we don't have all night.
Yeah, right.
So
it can be a very long list, right?
I will give you one that I've been thinking about. And these stories, I feel like we get a lot of the same, and those are the typical like demon possession narratives that we get, and I understand where they come from. They're good stories. The Exorcist was the first proper horror film I saw, way too young, but that was the first one I saw, and I understand why we keep going back to it, because it's scary. They're scary stories. But when you really get down to those stories, it's usually a woman who's being possessed. She's usually very young, which is bothersome. And then the demon that is possessing her is generally somewhat male, if you can assign gender to demons. I don't know, but that's how I would describe it. And then there's these male priests who come in to try to save the day and like fight over her body. And for most of the movie, she's not even herself. She is the male demon strapped to a bed somewhere. And I hate that narrative. I wish we could take what is terrifying about that, which is like loss of control of your body. Just the fact that there could be things, supernatural beings that can control our world, that have nefarious purposes in our world. I wish we could take that and not use it to take over a young woman's body. I wish we could do something else with that. So I would just say, I would caution people, and we have a few people trying to do different things with it, but I would love to see one of these female filmmakers like Eunice or Megan or somebody try to take that and flip it on its head and do something new and different with it.
Oh, that's spectacularly put. Megan or Eunice, do you guys have any, pet peeves with the horror genre, stuff that tropes or themes that particularly annoy you, that either you as filmmakers or somebody else should offer a different take on? Eunice, you go first.
Okay. Oh man. Okay. I think so. In writing recently, I'm writing my first feature, and I'm struggling with this, struggling with the idea of the final girl. because typically she is weak or frail, and she survives somehow. She's usually very, very small and cute, and she's damaged at the end. And I want the final girl to be like, I almost want her to be kind of evil too. Like, I want the final girl to be like, you know what, I can kill some people, or just like, I want her to be a survivor for real, not a survivor because she got lucky or because it looks great at the end, but because she was kicking ass from the beginning. I want her to find her ass kicking self in in the story and just end it on that high. And I would like her to be like 6 feet tall and just like brawling. I really would like to see that. I think that we're missing an opportunity to really find, like, you know, find a different type of final girl.
Right.
I would like that.
That's wonderful. I think people are very ready for that film too. Megan, did you have anything?
Yeah, it's actually kind of related to Eunice's, where I really want better female villains. Like, I really want more and different monstrous women in movies, because a lot of the time, because like so many of, like, you know, films are from a male perspective, it often is things that, you know, straight white men will be finding monstrous, and or like othering or something about a woman, and oftentimes it comes down to that she is also not either sexually available or sexually receptive, or sexually like or like even like, or like beautiful, or like something that they would want to that they find attractive. So it turned like Misery, or actually also related to just frustrating final girls, Friday the 13th with Mama Voorhees, or it's, you know, like these vixen women. So it's like, while I do really enjoy those villains for certain things, it is a huge majority of these characters, because it's also like, horror for me is a way for, like, it gives a lot of like opportunity for catharsis and self-reflection as well. Like it, and I really want to be challenged by my movies sometimes. It's like, I really want to see like a female character that I personally relate to, and it makes me feel horrible. And that's such a great feeling, because like there are great male villains that I can recognize as being accessible to the audience, and I can empathize with them because I can like on certain levels, but I just love that for more female villains.
I yet once again, something that I think there is a huge appetite for. Just anecdotally, I feel like there's this incredible groundswell of like a cult appreciation of Jennifer's body for precisely that reason.
Yes.
You know, like I was really surprised. Like I saw it in the theater. I loved it. But like a year or two ago, my students started asking me if I'd seen Jennifer's Body before. I was like, yeah, you're 19 years old. How do you know about Jennifer's Body? And like, it just recently, like it's on Criterion this month. And like, there's just all of a sudden, because people want this different kind of female villain, it feels like it's everywhere.
Like they're fun. Like it's fun seeing also like a really good villain. It's like, you know, and it's cathartic. It's like this dark, like power fantasy.
Yeah.
That I know that like a lot of people feel with Jennifer's Body, of obviously not everyone wants to, like, you know, not like exactly, but that's sort of fantasy of it.
Right. It's not a film that feels like it's punishing the woman for wanting power. or for being powerful, or for having characteristics that are associated with being unattractive or masculine or whatever. And yet still manages to have a villain, a good monster. Who knew? All it took was hiring some women behind the camera to make the movie. It's really weird how that works, isn't it? Okay, well, that with a collective endorsement of Jennifer's Body, that feels like a very good place to end this discussion. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us. This was an absolute blast of a conversation. We love your movies so much. Lisa, you did such a great job curating this for fellow Nick's geniuses. And I can't wait for the next one, which will also, can we say that it will be on Shudder?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I realized about halfway through the sentence that it might not be public. But so we'll be able to see that one next year as well. And to everybody who's tuned in or watching the recording, thank you for joining us. And